Hello, and welcome to Shrink, the podcast for the mind. I'm Philippe and I talk to the people who want to have a better understanding of their issues with weight and body image. This podcast is about eating out. Either eating out at your friends or at your parents, or going to the restaurant, going to your local pub, anywhere, but not at home. It really feels like, when I hear all my clients talking about it, it's much more difficult when you're eating out, not for everyone, but for many people, to control the amount of food you're going to have. Because you're being tempted by different things. You can be tempted by the waiter or the restaurant owner. You can be tempted by your friends who tell you, oh, look at what I've prepared for you. There are so many different things that can somehow change the way you're going to eat and the amount of food you're going to have. So let's start by eating out at the restaurant. It is more difficult for many of you to control the amount of food you're going to have, and the amount and sometimes the kind of food you're going to have. You can be tempted by the waiter when he's going to take your order. He's going to ask you if you want to have a starter, and maybe you'll feel bad for him or for the restaurant owner if you're not having one. Maybe he will think you're mean. I don't know. Things like that go through so many people's minds. And then you want to do like your friends do, like the other guests at the table do. So it's not unusual that you would hear someone saying, hey, is anyone having starters? Are you having starters? What do you think? And sometimes if your friend says, oh, I'm going to have a starter, how about you? You will find it difficult to say, well, no, I'm not, in fact, because I'm not hungry enough to have a starter. And even though logically it makes complete sense that you shouldn't order, something that you're not hungry for, it can be difficult. Maybe your friends, or you think your friends will think that you're not a good company. Sometimes they will say, oh, you know what, if you're not having a starter, I'm not going to have one either. Then you feel bad for them because you think, well, they really feel like having a starter, and now just because of me, they're not having one. So all these things can make it trickier. Usually, in fact, I order 2 starters. When I know that the other guests are going to have a starter and a main, I order 2 starters. Except if I'm really hungry for a starter and a main. But most of the time, I'm happy with two starters. There is also this moment when the waiter or the restaurant owner says, oh, tonight we have a special and it's this or that. And sometimes even if we're not really tempted by that, we're going to have it. You're going to have it. I'm not going to have it. But not everyone is going to have it for sure. But some people just find it difficult to say no. Because again, it's like they're not going to please the person who's taking the order, or they're going to sound mean. And for these reasons, which maybe you will find, not really relevant, but we do things sometimes which are not really relevant. And then we find out later, usually a bit later, once we've eaten our food, or when we go back home, we think, well, I ate too much. It was really too much. I enjoyed it. That's in the best case scenario, you've enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but that was way too much. And then comes the time when the waiter comes and says, would you like some pudding, some dessert? And then we all look at each other at the table and say, are you having one? Do you want a dessert? And the waiter will say, oh, we have this crème caramel, which is amazing. And again, it's the same dilemma. Do I want to join others and have a dessert or a pudding, or in fact, am I still hungry? Do I really feel like having that? So in fact, all this has a lot to do with making sure we're not disturbing others, we're pleasing others. It's about taking our place. And it makes so much sense to take your place. It's your body, it's your health, it's your hunger. But still, we find it difficult sometimes. Or, some people find it difficult sometimes. And the same story goes when you're not hungry anymore and you feel like leaving some food on your plate. Sometimes you don't even dare because others will ask you, oh, what's wrong? You don't like it? Or something was wrong with your food? It will be either a guest at your table or the waiting staff. And you may find it confronting. So just say, thank you, but I had enough. You shouldn't justify yourself any more than that. We may sometimes feel guilty as well because when we eat at a restaurant, it's usually quite pricey, and we feel bad leaving some food on the table. It's like we leave some money on the table. But I think it doesn't make much sense because, in fact, what you pay, the price you pay for the food at the restaurant, is not really for the food itself. It's for, it's for the waiting staff. It's for the decor. It's for the experience more than the food itself. If you would know what the food really costs, it's not that much. It's not a good reason to overeat. Certainly not. It's incredible, in fact, when you think everything that can go through someone's head before and whilst being at the restaurant. For many people, it will be just a nice experience. It's a night out with friends or with a partner or with your kids, whatever. But for many other people, it will be a challenge. They will start thinking about it before going out. They will start being worried when they are at the restaurant and then feeling bad about themselves when they go back home. Imagine how nice it is to just look forward to go out and order the food that you like and being able to stop eating when you're not hungry anymore without feeling bad for the restaurant staff, without feeling bad for your friends if you're not having a starter, if you're not having a pudding, just being free to eat whatever you want without having to explain yourself. Things can be even more challenging when we're eating at someone's place, when we're invited at someone's place, because they've been cooking for us and we don't want to disappoint them. Sometimes we know that it took them quite a long time to prepare everything. And for many people, food is like love. So how can you say no to food? It's like saying no to their love or to their feelings that they have for you. I mean that for some people, they put so much effort, you don't want to disappoint them. You would feel really bad if you would stop eating, even though you're not hungry anymore, you've had more than enough. But then again, even in this situation, it's unfair to you to overeat. It's unfair to have food that you don't need, that you don't want anymore. So just stop eating. You're not going to lose their love. You're not going to lose your friends or your parents or whoever is inviting you. If they know you, if they love you, somehow they won't care. They will just be happy if you're happy with the quantity of food you've had. It's a feeling we usually have from our youth when our mother was cooking for us. I say our mother because of my generation, it was usually the mother who was cooking. Now things are changing, too slowly, but they are changing. So our mother was cooking for us, and when we would stop eating, she would say, "You're not hungry anymore? Why aren't you eating? You don't like what mommy prepared for you?" Or things like that. Especially for me, coming from a Jewish family, food is a massive thing. So you don't want to disappoint a Jewish mother by saying, "No, thank you, Mom, I had enough." That just doesn't work. Another thing that can be difficult when we eat out is that we will sometimes eat later than we usually do. I know, talking about myself, that I usually eat very early, like at 6:30 or 7, because that's when I'm hungry, in fact. And I want to make sure I don't eat too late into the evening, because otherwise I don't sleep that well. But when we eat out, we start eating, when it's like 8 or even 9. And by then we're quite hungry. And we're also tired, in fact, quite often. So it's tempting to eat more. And of course, because we're hungry, we tend to eat quicker. And when we eat quicker, we cannot stop. We cannot detect that moment when we've had enough food. So for all these reasons, I would recommend that if you're hungry before going to a dinner or before going to the restaurant, have a snack. It will really help you eating the right amount of food when you're going out. A big difference when we're eating at the restaurant or at friends is the time we spend at the table. I know that when I eat by myself, I'm usually done within 10, 15 minutes. And when I go out, like everyone, it can last between an hour to 3 hours. And sometimes we've got food in front of us, all the time, or most of the time. And it can be challenging. It can be difficult not to grab a piece of bread from the bread basket, or not to eat a bit more out of the plate which is in front of us. And the same goes, of course, with the drinks. If you've got wine on the table, it can be really tempting to have some more, because maybe you're just thirsty, in fact, and you don't realize, and you grab your glass of wine. So what I do, and it really helps me, it's a very small thing, in fact, but I push my plate a bit further away, just to remind myself I'm done, I've had enough. Otherwise, I could be tempted to keep on eating whatever is left. And the same goes with the bread basket. I make sure it's not close to me. It's all about being mindful and not doing things without even realizing, not eating more even though we are done. So if you're mindful, if you really check with yourself and think, I've had enough, I don't need any more food, then you will be less tempted. Whilst if you just stopped, let's say, somehow by accident or because you thought it was enough, but you're not mindful, you will be tempted to eat more. I realize that the way I describe it, it's like a terrible experience full of tricks and challenges and stuff like that. Well, no, it's not. Most of the time, it's a very joyful experience, and we don't want it to be less joyful just because we are worried about what will happen in terms of what we will eat. So that's why I'm giving you these tips, and I hope they will help. I will do another podcast very soon about alcohol, and more specifically about what and how we drink when we go out for drinks or when we go out for dinner.